Hello, I am Katinka Soetens, and I'm here to talk with you about Heartlandia, this mystical continent, this ninth Earth Mother in this circle, this conference of the Earth Mother Goddess. It's really a mystical place that exists everywhere and nowhere specifically. It's the lands where she calls us, where our soul knows that we have a deep connection. And it is the place where our belonging blossoms, where we create community, where we find our spiritual path. Heartlandia as our spiritual homeland is really a place that resonates throughout our whole life and that we don't quite recognize usually in the beginning. And then the call, the connection gets stronger and stronger. And these lands can really be a mixture of places. Heartlandia speaks to us in many ways, in many places that call our attention somehow. Perhaps it is the lands of your birth, your homelands, your motherlands, that have a special place in your heart, and then particular places there that sing to you. Perhaps the great beaches and ocean sides, or the mountains, or the forest, or just a very small little part of your birthland where you had a special connection as a child. Perhaps your favorite tree. I remember I had this wonderful tree in which you could speak secrets in one of the forests we used to visit as a child on the weekends, in the sort of adjacent to the dune area in the Netherlands where I'm from. And I didn't recognize this as particularly spiritual or particularly anything to do with goddess. I was raised as a liberal Protestant. So it wasn't really later that I interpret these things like that, but the feeling place is something that connects you, that sings to you. It's where she begins to speak, where the nature spirits speak. It's the place where our ancestors connect to us, or we connect back into our ancestry, which is both our bloodline ancestry, but also our spiritual community. For me, the great goddess cultures of the world, really, and particularly of Europe. Definitely, if I had to define my Heartlandia, I would say it is Europe. I'm a daughter of her lands and her different people, her different cultures, her different ways of expressing goddess. But personally, of course, I have had this journey of that soul heart connection with particular landscapes or places since I was a child, that at the time were just magical places where I could disappear. I was so in connection, these deep places of connection that Heartlandia holds for us, that she brings us to in one way or the other in our lives. She opens us with into connection to her, where I really experienced something like non-separation with the natural world as a child. Perhaps you can remember these occasions as well. And then as I grew, as most of us do, when we're on a spiritual path or a pagan path where we get to connect in with the landscape as sacred, that is such a reconnecting into ancient ways, really, in whichever manner that happens for us, sometimes through traveling, maybe traveling to places that call you, that you know you have to go. I remember when I was in my teens and I saw a news or a National Geographic article about the temples in Malta. I think they were called the Great Sun Temples of Malta. And I just knew I had to go there. And then when I did in the early 80s, it was such an amazing connection, such a homecoming on some sort of level for me, that it really deepened my personal path at the time. I really started to feel into what the people who were the temple builders must have been like. What would their lives have been like? What would have their connection to goddess, to God, to divinity in whatever form? I wasn't sure, but it absolutely connected in for me to goddess because of the shape of the temples there, because of the obvious art of those people. And so it was a real development for me in actually becoming goddess focused in my own path. So the heartlands that have spoken to me are the places where Heartlandia has called us. When I was interrailing with my sister, when I was about 20 or something, young, we were driving on this train across the mainland of Greece. We were going from somewhere to somewhere. And we looked out of the window and there was this landscape, these hills and cypress trees. And there was something in that landscape that I knew, that called me, that I felt in my body, that I know. I know this place intimately. I care about this place. I've never been there. I don't know where it is. I've never been back. Obviously, we couldn't get off the train. I have no idea. But this delicious mystery that gives us this absolute personal, intimate relationship, a rooting, a connecting that is independent of where we're born or where we choose to live, that we can develop in places where we do end up living or find our home or are called to, but that are also specifically resting in some landscapes that wait for us to return. It's as if she is calling us, come, remember, come, I'm here, I've never left, you are of me. For me, Heartlandia is these lands that call you, that you want to go to. For me, personally, Crete is one of these places, a spiritual homeland for me, where I have deep connection to the land that holds strong memory, particularly of goddess times, of goddess cultures, beautiful, beautiful ways of being that were not warring nature. It wasn't that they couldn't defend themselves, but they were not war-based, they were not greed-based. And it's such an amazing place for me. It's such a place of inspiration, of plugging in. I think Heartlandia brings the medicine for us, for the great wounding of disconnection. If you think back into the ancestral places of our bodies and beings, then really we are disconnected from our ancestry, from our history, because the history we know is written by the conquerors that were almost always violent conquerors. And we have, as Europeans, been very successful at colonization of the rest of the world. But in doing so, we not only have not really connected, we carry that wounding of disconnect with the land and the beings and the goddess who speaks in that land. But we have also wounded the people of that land, of those places, in a way that disconnection is created there too, through displacement, through the disowning of any value of their sacred ways of being, which is a whole way of life. Heartlandia holds within her heart, for our hearts, an entire way of life, which is why Heartlandia is a spiritual homeland, because it is a way of being that we can seed in, that we can remember in, wherever it is that we end up living through circumstance or choice. The places of belonging that call us, that are the heart medicine, are her lands, wherever they are. So personally, I may have found that in Crete, I may have found that in Cornwall, magical land that I ended up by, almost by mistake. It was a fantastic little magic of seeing a television program and then having to decide in that same year where I was going to go as au pair to learn English better. And so I chose Cornwall, not having heard anything about this place, known anything about this place other than a television program that I'd seen and that I very much liked the energy of. I ended up very good fortune of living and working on this beautiful organic farm, on the top of which the downland, that wonderful misnomer in the English language where you call something down when it's actually up, on the top of the hill, on top of which was this tumuli, this Celtic tumuli. And I used to climb on top of that and look out on the landscape, and there my heartland, had this caress, this dance of the sun and the shadow of the clouds, something I'd never really seen like that coming from the flat lands of my motherland of the Netherlands. And the caress of the wind in the grasses or the corn that grew in the field, the bird's eye view and the buzzard that was absolute guardian of that realm, and beneath my feet the resonance of the ancestors, which are part of my personal ancestral Celtic DNA, in the ground, in the way they lived. They were there. They hadn't been excavated. They weren't gone. They were right there. That was such a deep medicine for me, and it really changed me. It informed me. Is to bring my moon blood there, and the connection that women have had in all indigenous traditions of connecting our blood to the earth, of feeding the earth mother as she feeds us in this reciprocal way of flow, of circling, of being part of the great cycle of life and death and rebirth that is held by her, through her. And so Heartlandia is a spiritual home. Anywhere you find yourself, where you create personal, intimate relationship with the land, where you allow the land, the ancestors, the beauty of her nature to touch you, to open you, to speak to you. And in this time where we live, where we have such an intense global wounding of displacement, people have to leave the lands that they love, that they have these connections to, for all sorts of reasons. War, climatical change through our disrespectful ways of being with the earth that have caused climate change, now causing droughts or floods or famines or plagues, through the hideous effects of power over trafficking of people, through the loss of indigenous cultures, through our power over ways of behaving with others who we always perceive as lesser than, and through our economic needs, the poverty in places that is caused by the complete disbalance in the distribution of her great abundance in all ways, causes this wounding of displacement, of disconnection. And we all carry that. We carry that within our personal stories. We carry that within our family lineage. We carry that within our DNA. We carry that. And our remembering Heartlandia is really our medicine. In if we can listen to her, if we can feel her, if we can allow that. Perhaps this means that you need to travel to your spiritual homes, or never travel there but connect in and find the magic. The places like Avalon, Glastonbury, or the temple places in India, or Tibet and the sacred mountains, or wherever it is, the great caves, whatever the places are, the sacred groves, to remember, and in some cases to replant that which was lost. To visit the places in your mind, in your visualizations, or in physicality, or by studying these places. Of course, it is very different to actually be able to go to some of these than to look at pictures of them. But even then, she can speak to you. Even then, she can call you and give you this amazing opening that happens in the belonging to. Her embrace of the lands of belonging bring really this intimate connection, which we can create on the lands that we live through choice or through chance. So Cornwall, for me, one of my great Heartlandias, the place where I had my children, I birthed my babies and buried their placentas into the earth there of a sacred little apple orchard that we had. And so there is this coming from and returning to the earth that our ancestors, of course, lived in a very different way, in that intimate connection to her. For us, it is the spiritual path, the spiritual heartlands that calls us back to that. And we are then free to actually create that wherever we are, which is a miraculous thing. And so we all have the ability to carry the heart's bundle that makes Heartlandia our sacred land wherever we go, that connects us to the places where she speaks to us, where our soul resonance, our karma calls us into remembering, and when we can drop into really hearing her, and where we can recreate, through which we can recreate really that personal connection, because what we don't have connection to, we cannot care for. And this is part of the wounding of the disconnect, that we don't actually care. It's kind of alien and threatening or dangerous, whereas really it is this great adventure, the exploration of Heartlandia in a lifetime, whether you do that staying in one place or whether you travel to many lands. It is really always a coming home to yourself, to your own heart. And so to remind us, to help us in that journey to Heartlandia and with her, we make a heart bundle, which is something we will do in relationship together in ceremony, but which you can do at any time. So I here have my cloth, and I'm going to make my heart's bundle out of little stones and shells from many of the different lands that are important to me. I also have earth and herbs. I'm going to start with a shell for the Netherlands. And then I have here, when I left Cornwall, I took with me some earth. So I'm putting some of that earth in my heart's bundle. And for Crete, I have the wonderful sage that I pick. It grows on the mountains there. So I put some of that sage in, and also some beautiful little stones for some of the temple sites. I tend to pick up little pebbles, the sacred places, a little bit of ancient pottery, so that I found for pottery shards for the ancestors. And I have for the temples of Khajuraho, I have some beautiful frankincense incense for those amazing temple sites. Temples of Greece, a little crystal, the mainland temples of Greece. These amazing places, the lands of South Africa, the Karoo, have these little red stones that are from there, which are part of my Heartlandia as well. I have here also, to go into my heart's bundle, some sand. This is sand from the Sahara, from the lands of what is Egypt. Also goes in here, amazing places. And I'm going to place some flowers from my garden, these beautiful lavenders, so perfect for Avalon, Glastonbury, part of my heart's bundle in this honoring of Heartlandia, which is a really good practice to honor all the places where she speaks. And this heart bundle you can work with in different ways. But for now, I'm going to finish this by placing some of my offerings. These are flower petals, herbs, and different sacred plants I find when I go to different places, go into my offering bundle that comes with me everywhere as a blessing. It's a blessing, as an offering of gratitude to Heartlandia, who sings to all of us, who lives in our heart's connection to the land wherever we are, and to the sacred places of our spiritual journey, our spiritual homeland that we carry within us, because she is within us as well as in exactly the place where we are in this moment. So with great gratitude to Heartlandia for her guidance, her connection that is within us and around us, that is wherever you are in this moment. Close the heart bundle with love and gratitude, placing it against my heart. May you be very blessed in your connection to your Heartlandia. Just for the last few moments, place a hand on your heart and take a couple of nice deep breaths into your heart. Thank you, Heartlandia, for living in my heart and for holding my heart to yours. May the landscape of your heart be your spiritual home, and may she be bright in her presence within you. May she guide your feet and bless your actions on the lands and the places you feel connection to and the places where you live. Blessed be. Thank you very much for listening.